acknowledge and pay respect to the Aboriginal elders, past, present, and future. Where I am now is the land of Wadumedigal people. So I'd like to introduce Ryōtoku to everybody here. So Ryōtoku, I'd like to just read your bio out briefly. Okay, so Ryōtoku has been a Buddhist practitioner for a while. In 2013, Ryōtoku began studying Rinzai Zen, practicing koan and zazen meditations, where he undertook jukkai, or receiving the precept ceremony, that same year, and later began a Zen junior teacher program, which provided training in mindfulness and meditation. In 2015, after continuing his studies, Ryōtoku wished to expand and understand more regarding Buddhism and began studying Tendai, where he also received jukkai and subsequently joined a 2-year lay leader program. This inspired him to begin studying at an academic level, and in 2020, Ryōtoku began a master's in Buddhist studies with the University of New South Wales. Sorry, University of South Wales. New South Wales is in Sydney, and the University of South Wales, which I believe is in the UK. Yeah. After graduating in 2023, Ryōtoku traveled to Japan and received Tokudo ordination on Mount Hiei with the Tendai tradition. Ryōtoku is currently in Japan to complete his training and at the same time begin his PhD research. Okay, so over to you, Ryōtoku. Normally, we start with meditation. You can talk a little bit about what you want to do, and then maybe there's a bit of a talk, followed by Q&A, perhaps a little bit of meditation again, but the format is up to you.
So I think most people are probably familiar with mindfulness meditation, like a simple counting the breath or just following the breath. So we can just do a very short mindfulness of breathing practice in your own style, and then it's going to actually be covered, that style, in this talk. So we'll only go for about 2 minutes. I just want to double check. Where I live, there's a train track and trains run right past. Are the train sounds coming through in the audio? Okay, perfect. Okay, wonderful. All right, so we'll just freely, in your own method, we'll just begin just 2 minutes counting the breath. So we'll begin now. Mindfulness of breathing. Okay, if you could slowly draw your attention back into the talk, slowly opening your eyes and being mindful back into this talk now. So I want to thank you, Sinsin, for the introduction. And also I'm glad we could begin with some mindfulness, because it does help you to anchor yourself into the present moment, which is going to be the theme for this talk. Sinsin, should I share my screen?
Yes, sure. Sophia, can...
so we can allow you to share your screen.
Mhm.
Yep, you're free to share your screen now.
Thank you.
Venerable.
Thank you very much. Okay, can everybody see the screen? Okay, so today's talk will be on the 5 skandhas and the 5 meditations and how can they be used together in a way which leads towards practical realizations of theoretical content. So the basic theory of meditation, you don't need to read through everything on screen if you don't want to, it's fine. I'm going to say it out loud anyway. But the theory that this meditation system uses is based upon the Pali Canon's texts, speech of the luminous mind, that the mind is inherently lumined but defiled by kleshas. The mind is covered by defilements and is obscured by those defilements and can be freed by those defilements. Then we have the defilements are themselves the same as the essence of the luminous minds. And this is based on Mahayana teachings of the Tathagata and the Buddha nature. That the defilements of the kleshas are stored deep within the mind, within the unconscious mind. And this is referred to in both the Mahayana and the Theravada teachings as based upon this underground consciousness which hold the seeds of karma. Allowing the defilements that's held within the mind to be freed and liberated liberates the mind. And tracing this light back to its source liberates the mind. So this is defined as uniting the parts together with the whole and releasing what has been grasped and restricted. So when the mind is fragmented and split, constricted and bound, this is suffering or dukkha. And when the mind is liberated and whole again, this is nirvana. So the word bhavana is the word that's often used for, we say meditation. There is no word obviously as meditation in the Pali Canon or in the Mahayana canons. But bhavana means cultivation. So the cultivation in the meditation often aimed specifically in the Pali Canon is jhana. And so the cultivation of jhana leads towards what we generally refer to as meditations. And these meditations, what we call meditations, are qualities of cultivating the mind through jhana. And we have sati or smriti, which translates as, in English, as mindfulness. And the more literal translation would be recollection or memory, keeping in mind. Samatha translates as calming, and this is tranquility and calming of the heart and the mind. Samadhi translates to concentration, which is a pretty good translation because the word concentrate links in towards bringing something large and making it small and narrow focus of the mind. And samadhi, similarly, is 2 parts, means sama to unite and di to utilize or to penetrate. And vipassana or vipassana is insight and more literally translate to be clear seeing or direct seeing or higher seeing. And jhana, there is it's often translated as meditative absorption. I've just put absorption here, but jhana is the main practice that the Buddha Shakyamuni recommended people practice in order to realize nirvana. All of these 4, mainly samatha and vipassana, these 2 are often paired as one. They were very rarely were they taught to be separate. And in the process of jhana, for example, in the Eightfold Noble Path, right samadhi is jhana. So all of these are related, and we're going to look at how they can be differentiated and practiced. Now, the skandhas, again, you guys may be aware of, I'm going to go over again. The first of the body is rupa. Rupa is form composed of the 4 material elements. Vedana, feelings based upon like, dislike, and unambiguous, how we feel about sensations. Consciousnesses is vijnana, is that which discriminates and divides the reality of experience into segments and parts. Samjana, perceptions, that which recognizes the differences and labels it as this or that, i.e., it sees patterns and discriminates the differences in things and names them as such. Samskaras are those parts latent within our mind that receive the impressions of our actions and then provide volition or will for action. Does that make sense so far? Thank you. If there's any questions at any point, just shout. So for example, in Zen, there is a path which is followed, with which we begin and we end with realizing our true nature, bodhi, or reality. And so the path of Zen, which is going to be the template of what we're going to use here, is based on first catching the bull, taming the bull, riding the bull, transcending the bull, and transcending both self and bull, returning to the source. And the bull is a metaphor for our habit energy, or parts of our consciousness which we have separated from and which we reunite with, and together we reunite to the source of our own mind. In a very short and easy way, which we're going to practice together, is to see these 5 stages linked with these 5 meditations as first being coming into contact with our own mind, calming in the face of our own mind, following the mind, observing the mind, and liberating. Now, these 5 stages will be explained later. These 5 stages also relate to 5 kind of psychological sufferings that everybody can go through to some degree. The first is disassociation, where the mind and body becomes split to some degree, or becomes distant from. Panic is the state of suffering in which where we react with frenzy or panic. Scattering of the mind is when the mind becomes restless or disorientated. Projection, when the mind overlays onto reality what it wants to be real. And repression, when one deals with suffering or pain or trauma by burying it deep, deep away inside. So each of these meditations deal with 5 of these reactions that we go through with suffering. So I'm not going to go through in depth again these, but then I've got this. This is here for anybody who wants to go into more depth. But we have rupa. The main thing is that as we deal with rupa, is the physicalness of phenomena itself. Vedana is once again sensations in terms of its attractiveness, how we like it, we dislike it, or unambiguous. Vijnana, again, this discrimination of these sensations recognized based upon its color and its shape. Then the generating of the views around those things is samjhana. And then samskara receives the karmic impressions based upon sensations and then generates volition and reactions. So we now go through the practice. So sati, mindfulness, again means to remember, to hold in mind. The traditional approach to mindfulness is called the 4 foundations or the 4 presences of mind, beginning with body, moving to vedana, feelings, through to chitta or mind, and then finally ending in dharma or reality. And mindfulness based upon all of these 4 in turn. And the fundamental practice that can be used throughout all of those 4 is the mindfulness of the breath. So the practice we're going to use in this 5-4 stages focuses on kaya, body, so mindfulness of the body. And we're going to utilize breath. And breath is kind of like the guiding force which you use, which anchors you to the body and to the present moment throughout the practice. So when we practice sati, mindfulness of the body, a very good way in which we can engage with it, both in practice and all times, is physical posture itself. So the actual structure of our bodies, being aware from the contact of on the ground, through to the spine, through to the crown of our head. And mindfulness practice helps to build a mind and body connection. And the greater we can have a mind and body connection, the more we can become aware of how the mind communicates it's through the body. So, for example, if you're stressed, you can become tense, and this can actually manifest in physical tension, which you can feel. So learning how to recognize the signs of nervousness, of anger, etc., of the emotions of the mind and how it feels, it manifests to the body, comes about through mindfulness of the body. So samatha is linked to tranquility, and above is a quote from the Pali Canon. And the focus on is that the practice of samatha is used to tranquil the mind, to remove passions. So the passions specifically are the 3 fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. And so when we look at greed, how in which we can deal with greed in a meditation setting is focusing on, as we become mindful of the body and its sensations, how we can focus on the reaction to what we like within the experience internally, what we dislike, and what we are unsure of or unafraid or afraid of within us, which we reject. So the grasping, the pushing away, and the veiling, these three things are the three fires or the three afflictions which we use to which we avoid. So we're not doing these three, and instead we're at the bottom of having an open heart towards our own selves, to be able to feel and to come into contact with whatever arises within ourselves. So we're not trying to, whatever may arise, especially painful emotions, painful memories, things that we don't like or things we do like, we neither grasp and we neither push away. Samadhi is the unification of mind, and samadhi takes mind or citta as its object. So the aim is to follow the continuum of the mind, the moment of moment experience of both internal and external. So consciousness in Buddhism is the five sense objects, and the mind as the sixth. So all of these together become the stream of consciousness which flows from birth to death and from life to life. This constant stream of consciousness is what we become aware of in samadhi. And vipassana is clear seeing and direct seeing. So in Mahayana Buddhism and in Theravada Buddhism, it's linked with prajna. But in Mahayana Buddhism, prajna is linked with emptiness. And emptiness is just the observation of things as being without self-nature, being without self-essence. But our aim is to observe the essence of things in and of themselves without our overlay of what we think they are. So the mind is continuously creating ideas about things that it sees, both internally and externally. When we try and observe things without any projection, without any views or ideas about what we're seeing, we can see things as they are, which is the aim of vipassana. Finally, we have the practice of jhana. Jhana is very difficult to describe, and so, in my opinion, it's best to think of jhana as the four practices which we did earlier, leading slowly towards jhana, specifically the fourth jhana. And so jhana is beginnings with the separation from the sensual pleasures and unwholesome states, which brings about a sense of joy and happiness. The second jhana is linked with allowing the samskaras that are hidden within the latent mind to come into view, and the unification of the mind, which is similar to samadhi. The third jhana is linked to abiding in the state of equanimity, seeing all things as equal, which is strongly linked with vipassana. And then the fourth jhana, jhana chuli, is going beyond the desire for sukha and the aversion for dukkha, which once again is abiding in the state of equanimity. So this state of jhana in the texts is very much linked with the state of equanimity, which is seeing all things as being equal, and neither pushing or rejecting anything. So in the cosmology in the Buddhist world, the jhanas are linked with what's called are part of the world view. So we have the six realms, we have the four jhanas, and we have the four ajhanas. And the ajhanas are the formless attainments. So the last four are the very subtle realms, and these are not part of the main practice or the main cultivation of mind. The four jhanas, specifically the fourth, is what the Buddha is encouraging people to practice. And this practice is not the same as going into these realms of existence, but is internal. So this is an internal cultivation of mind, and they're using your chat. Sorry, I just saw. So I can't see the chat. Could you one of the hosts?
Yeah.
Okay. I can read it out if you want, or maybe it's up to you. We can actually wait until you have finished first.
Okay.
Or, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's something that's urgent, you can just shout me. If it's not, I'll say at the end. Okay. So the purpose of the old practices from before the Buddha's time was to go into these realms of existence to try and escape suffering through entering a different realm, a different world. But in the Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings, it's not about escaping this world through entering another world. It's through using these practices to be able to release specifically the samskaras, the holding of the karmic seeds held within us, and the obscurations. So the removal of these defilements is the aim, to reveal the natural luminous minds. So even though we have all of this cosmology here, it's not so important. The main thing is using these practices to be able to internally release our attachments to our defilements. So in summary, these practices can link to psychological states of suffering. So each of them can directly be linked to one other kind of natural reaction we have to panic. So whenever there's any stress stimuli, human beings react in a way to deal with that stress, to be able to cope. And so the practices of jhana, sati, samadhi, vipassana help us to be able to deal with these problems. At the same time, when we look at all the different forms of meditations we mentioned, there is an overlap. So even though we speak about them as being different, they kind of all blend into each other in a slight way. It's not to be overcomplicated, but just know that once you practice one, specifically beginning with sati, as you practice it, it leads slowly into the others, as you slowly begin to connect internally with yourself. So in the practice in which we're going to do, we're going to kind of go through these stages. First, with catching the ball, which is entering the state of contact, mindfulness of the body, which is coming in contact with our internal world. And this deals with the reaction or the negative reaction to suffering or disassociation. So we're doing the opposite of that by connecting with the body. The second is taming the bull, is the reaction of panic or frenzy. We're doing the opposite of that by calming the mind down and connecting with our feelings, specifically our feelings of attraction and repulsion. Riding the bull is, again, the negative trait of scattering of the mind, or the mind becoming restless. We're countering that by following the mind, tracing the mind back to its source, and becoming mindful of the mind stream itself. The next stage of transcending the bull is the habit of the mind to project over onto ourselves and into the world of what we think the world should be like. We counteract by pure awareness, observing without conceptualizing, and becoming mindful of Dharma, which is reality itself. And finally, returning to the source is the final stage of practice, where we counter the negative trait of repression and rejecting things we don't like and stuffing that into the dark pit of our minds. We allow all of these things in our mind to come and manifest, and we focus on the invisible samskaras latent within our subconscious mind, and allow them to be released, and allow us to reach into those states at the same time. And that is the end of my talk. Thank you very much. I will end the share. We're going to have the meditation, where we're going to go through these stages. I'll kind of guide you through it. I don't know if you want to have questions first and then the meditation, or vice versa, but I can look in the chat. You can let me know what's best.
Thank you very much for such a comprehensive talk, and we managed to cover quite a lot in quite a short period of time. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Ryōtoku. So it's up to you. Do you want to start doing the meditation first, and then there are two questions that I can read out later on, or would you like to answer
Okay,
these questions?
I'll just quickly cover it really quickly. Jhanas can be practiced by everybody. It says bhikkhu. I just quoted the text in the Pali Canon, but it's not only for monastics. No, it's not true. And NP, NNP, I'm not sure what that is. The state of NP, NNP.
Sorry, that's not perception or non-perception. Yeah.
The reason why the Buddha didn't encourage people to achieve that state is because that state is very similar to nirvana. So similar that once you achieve that state, you can't tell the difference between that state and nirvana. But that state isn't nirvana, so you will still be subject to the samsara. You still die and be born again. So that's why the Buddha encouraged the fourth jhana, because at that state you will then be able to move towards stream entry and know the difference between arhatship and nirvana.
Sorry, so MP and P stage is useful for understanding what nirvana feels like, but to attain stream entry, you don't necessarily need that state. But even if you have experienced MP and P, doesn't mean that you're enlightened. So we have to be cautious about.
That is correct, yeah.
So what would be the difference between that state and enlightenment, say? Is it that is still conditioned existence?
Exactly. That state, NP and NP, is a very subtle state of existence, but it's still within the triple worlds. The purpose of jhana is not necessarily to reach the state. Of course, it is to reach it, but the purpose is the releasing of the kleshas. So from that state, from that very subtle state, the Buddha recommended, because he believed it was the best state for you to be able to release the obscurations and the passions of the mind. And the reason why that is, I'll have to maybe research further, but the Buddha recommended the fourth jhana as the most appropriate state of existence in which you can attain that. The others, there will be other issues that you may come into contact with. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to begin the practice of meditation. I'm going to try and guide you through slowly through the talk. We're going to begin now. So in a comfortable sitting posture, have your hands on your lap, so where you feel comfortable. Eyes slowly lowered. Beginning with mindfulness of the body. Beginning with mindfulness of the breath. The first observation of mindfulness of the breath is the inflow of breath through your nose and the expansion and the contraction of your abdomen. Being mindful of your breath, be mindful of the contact of your body with the ground, with your feet and with your hips to the earth. Both left side and right side of your hips to your spine, to your back, to your shoulders, to your neck, and through the crown of your head. Be mindful of your whole skeleton structure supporting your body. Be mindful of your nerves and move your muscles. Tension stored within the muscles. Be mindful of the feeling of the air on your skin, the feeling of your clothes on your skin, the temperature and the texture. Be mindful of how you feel. Do you like the feeling? Do you dislike the feeling? Is there pain? Is there pleasure? Whatever feelings arise, accept them. Neither pushing away, neither holding on. Accept all sensations to arise and embrace them within your heart. Allow any sensation that's felt to pervade through your whole body, with the grasping, only allowing. Allow the mind to turn upon itself and watch itself. Allow the mind to watch its own awareness, watch moment after moment. Watch how each moment conditions the next moment. Watch how each moment of thought connects to another moment of thought. Each moment of awareness links to another moment of awareness. Allow the mind to enter the stream, continuous, flowing, without any breaks, without any gaps. As the mind begins to flow, take a step back and watch this flow of mind. Observe the mind completely independent. Observe the stream from the outside, seeing the stream continuously flow. Continuously observe the stream and mind without any concern of self. Observe in the present moment without past, without memories, just observing, completely new, without any ideas or thoughts. Observing the mind. Now drop your position, drop your location. Observing all things with no place, like space, like light, completely radiant, at one with the object of observation. No subject, no object. Allow the mind to pervade everywhere. Slowly returning to the present moment, returning to the room, and retract, going back to mindfulness of the breath, feeling the body from the contact on the ground through to our spine, our backs, our front, our chest, our shoulders, our necks, our throat, our face, and our head. Slowly bring your hands together to the top of your head, over your eyes, and open your eyes slowly in the darkness. Allow the light slowly to penetrate to your eyes as you rub your face, slowly returning to the light, rubbing your neck, slowly rubbing your neck, your shoulders, your arms, your legs, your feet, and slowly returning back into the room. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining me in today's talk. I hope it was useful. If there are any questions or observations or experiences you'd want to share, I'd be very grateful.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Sophia is going to moderate the Q&A session, if you don't mind. And then people are free to put their questions in the chat box, or they can ask the questions verbally as well. So, yes, thank you once again.
Thank you.
So over to you, Sophia.
Thank you, Sing Sing, and thank you, Venerable, for the wonderful talk. Do we have any questions or people wish to share their experience in the meditation? You're welcome to unmute yourself to share, or you can also type your questions or comments in the chat. So we have one question. Bante, what can we do to our mind when it is in panic or tiring mode?
Sorry, I have a train right by me. I'm glad you guys can't hear it. You said, what can we do when we're in panic or?
Yes, panic or tiring mode. So I guess, yeah, when we're really panicking or tired.
So personally, I find that mindfulness of the breath is very powerful when I'm in a state of panic, mainly focusing on the flow of the abdomen going in and out, in and out. And the movement of the breath has a natural calming effect. And the aim is to simulate deep breathing as though you're sleeping, or like a breathing of a baby. So when you're in deep sleep and you think about how you breathe in a very calm and rhythmic way. And if you try and emulate that same breathing related to being in one of the most calmest state you could be in, which is deep sleep, this helps to trick the brain into replicating that same state of mind. And this allows you to become calm. So that rhythmic flow and deep, I don't know if you can hear it, but you can breathe deep and that helps you to calm down. So the connection to the body. Also, when you're in a panic state, often you're in your chest, your breathing becomes shallow and your focus is here. So when you drop it and you anchor it and you settle it down lower, it helps to take your energy away from the chest area and allows it to deepen throughout the whole body. So this is very useful for if you think about when people are going to do like a big lift, or like in weightlifting or big movement, and they take deep breaths to psych themselves up. So deep breathing can be used to both energize yourself to do something you need to do and to calm yourself down if you used in the correct way.
Thank you, Bante. That was a great answer. Would you say, like, when you deep breathing, where is your attention? Are you bringing your attention to the body or?
Definitely to the body, mainly to the abdomen. So in Japanese Buddhism, mostly in Zen, there is a concept called hara or hara, and it's very similar to Chinese philosophy with the dantian in Japan. In Japanese is called tanden. So this is just below the belly button. It's basically your center of gravity. So below your belly button, this is the center. So when you center yourself, it helps to center your mind. So you can go straight to that point and focus on that point anytime, but as well as the movement of the stomach like a ball centered on the tara or tanden helps to really anchor you and settle you. It's very important in the martial arts and very important if you want to be calm also in any situation.
Thank you, Bante. I love that. It's what I've been experimenting recently too, and I find that it is the best for me to just instantly calm down without trying to force myself to calm down.
There is a comment here. I think it says, really interesting meditation. I find guided meditations really helpful. Can I find you on maybe on YouTube, hopefully, with the Anjali gesture? Thank you, Venerable, for a fascinating talk. And that's from Nikki.
I haven't really done much things outside of the Sangha. This is actually the first external thing I've done for people. So with Sin, we can work together, and I can try and make a guided meditation that may be useful for you guys in the future. If you like that, I can do that.
And who knows what the future holds. And I think, Ryōtoku, you mentioned that you might You might come to Australia around, this time, I mean, in November or maybe sometime in the near future, right?
Yeah, definitely. If there's opportunity, I can, and I'm not too busy with my PhD work, I will definitely make the trip to visit you guys for sure. Do hope so.
That sounds so wonderful. Love to have you here in person with us and listen
Thank
to
you.
you as well and meditate together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hope the causes and conditions align one day.
Yes, I hope so too.
And thank you, Sing Sing, for bringing Venerable to our center. As always, like all these wonderful teachers. We have also two questions from Leonie. One is, what is the MP-NNP, please, which was discussed earlier?
Okay, so the NP is states of the cosmos, the world, in ancient Indian perspective or Buddhist perspective, which is the most subtlest and highest. So if you think about the most gross and worst and filled with pain, it's hell, the hellish realms. And then you have the realm of the ghosts, realm of animals, humans, demigods, and then the gods or the devas. This is the realm of desire, the Kama realm. Above that, we have the four realms of jhanas. And then above that, there's four more formless realms. And the highest of those that you can attain is the NP and NP. So subtle that our mind can't logically understand what it means because it's neither perception nor non-perception. The beings in this realm don't possess physical bodies. They only possess some type of very subtle existence, which is neither perception nor non-perception. But what that is very difficult to us to comprehend. Even the gods in the highest realm can't even see or perceive the gods in the realms above them. So subtle. So it's a very, very high state of existence that some people can attain in meditation. But even those people who make that strong effort to attain that state still are reborn back into the lower realms eventually. Even though their lifespans are incalculably long, they still are subject to the process of suffering. And my PhD is in esoteric Buddhism, and it's mostly looking at the soteriology of esoteric Buddhism, looking at how the process of esoteric Buddhism or Vajrayana leads one to enlightenment. So it's comparing kind of the system of enlightenment as understood in the Mahayana and the Theravadan traditions, and how the Vajrayana tradition claims to attain the same state through different means. Essentially, is my PhD major, and I'm looking at comparisons between different methods.
That's so fascinating, Venerable. And so with MPNP,
Mm.
what are some of are there any descriptions? Because I think in the suttas there's actually no description of what you experience, or maybe there is not very comprehensive. Like, would you know?
No, because the Buddha, before he became the Buddha, after he left his home to wander and met the ascetics, he found teachers who taught these methods of meditation, and he found them and he meditated in those states and he obtained very subtle states, very joyful states. But he said that once he exited that state, he was back to normal life again, and he still suffered. So that's why he realized that this wasn't the method he needed. And eventually he remembered to when he was a child, and he was by the tree, by the rose tree, and he was just being very relaxed, and he felt as though he entered into the first jhana, not the formless ones, just the first one. And he realized, okay, this is the path that leads towards cessation. And that's when he began to leave the ascetic practices and sat by the bodhi tree for enlightenment. So the reason why he didn't focus on those states so much is because he believed that it's kind of very similar. It feels really good. It feels like an enlightenment, but it only lasts whilst you're in that state. And if you manage to die when you're in that state of meditation, then you most likely be reborn in that state, but you still haven't realized your Buddha nature. You still haven't realized Bodhi, and you're still subject to birth and death in samsara. So he rejected that and focused on the middle way, the Eightfold Noble Path, and all of these things, because NP and NP, the perception or non-perception, is just one element of the jhana practice, but the Eightfold Path includes sila, includes, many other elements as well that the Buddha believed is necessary to realize Buddha nature.
So, Venerable, did Buddha recommend us to practice that, or it sounds like he didn't necessarily? He,
Yeah, he didn't recommend people to practice the formless jhanas. So he recommended only the practice of the form jhanas. Um, in other schools of Buddhism, the formless jhanas are to some degree practiced. Even in Tendai, our tradition, there is at least some element of practice regarding the formless. However, traditionally, the historical Buddha did not teach the formless jhanas, and I don't believe they're necessary, in my opinion. From my practicing just of these practices, I've had good results that are fruitful, and I kind of trust the Buddha's guidance. Even though I practice the Mahayana Buddhism, I still kind of very much follow the Pali Canon as the basis and the Mahayana as a way just to explain deeper elements of it. But I think it's a very simple practice, but I think it's very effective.
Thank you. And Venerable, do you mind just expanding a little bit more on your PhD? Like what have you found so far? What's your topic and so on?
Okay. Okay. So to go into more depth, what I'm doing, I don't want to overcomplicate it, but there's a tradition in Greece called Neoplatonism, and there was a Greek philosopher called Iamblichus, and he created a system called theurgy, which was a way of using ritual and invocation of the gods to achieve what's called kenosis, or union with the One. And he wrote a very long treatise on how the practice of ritual, it can enable one, a philosopher, to attain the same goals that Plato taught and Pythagoras taught. And so I'm using his kind of like system as a way to say, okay, there's a framework for the soteriology of ritual work. Can this be applied to Buddhism? And for the most part, there's a lot of strong similarities with the emergence of what's called Tantra, of Vajrayana Buddhism and Dharani, and the interacting with these beings and these deities and these bodhisattvas and Buddhas, and how this can lead one to enlightenment. And it links somewhat to your question about NP and NP, because the Vajrayana perspective is that they are trying to attain the highest jhana state, and then from there break through in this manner, which is slightly different to in the Theravada canon. So it's like going into the edge of reality, and then through the assistance of these divine beings, breaking through into this realm. So, like in Theravada tradition, you have the Pure Lands, and in these traditions, they utilize very much a strong sense of the Buddha who resides in the Pure Land, and interacting with him to become one with him, or realize we are the same as this Buddha deity, Vairochana, who exists in his own Pure Land, in the center of a mandala, which is the whole universe. And from that position, they can obtain enlightenment. So it's a very, very complex and ritualized way to try and achieve the same thing that Shakyamuni Buddha achieved by sitting on the site of enlightenment into the Bodhi tree, but they interpret this to be the center of the whole universe. And it's a bit more cosmological and like exaggerated version of that one experience of what happened during enlightenment.
Wow, that sounds fascinating.
It's
Sounds
very
like
complicated. Yeah.
wow, that's really, really fascinating because I'm personally, I don't know, maybe many people are as well on the call who's not Tibetan practitioners, fascinated
Mm.
by the deity practices because it's
Mm-hmm.
really not practiced in Theravada. But when you explain it like that, kind of understand a little bit more where they're coming from, even if we may not be practicing that.
Well, on one side, it kind of was practiced in Theravada because the Buddha was the deity. So the Buddha has 32 marks of perfection. And so in the past, people would visualize those qualities on themselves. So he has like a fleshy protrusions on his head, long earlobes, and in circles on his hand, the wheel. So you can visualize that people in the past would visualize these on themselves, and they'll feel like they were Shakyamuni Buddha. And so you can kind of connect with his wisdom and enlightenment by sitting like him, and taking on board his qualities, because each of those qualities is symbolic of a quality of his own enlightenment. So this is one practice that was done in the past, which is kind of like the inspiration for the visualization of deities that will, which in the myriad of deities that exist in Vajrayana, the one Buddha Shakyamuni Shakyamuni Buddha, you could also visualize his qualities as well.
Ah, interesting. Right. So there are a lot of like linkages. It's just
So,
like
man,
different emphasis and like levels of.
I believe so.
That is fascinating. I love that. Leonie said, thank you, Venerable. May wisdom of the Buddha guide you to a skillful PhD outcome. And she also said, I love the idea of linking to Greek mysteries.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a very in academia, people are very careful about doing it. They don't like doing it because in the past it was very common and it was seen to be too much of overgeneralization. Because in the 1800s, 1900s, there were many academics who just believed all traditions are the same, they all have the same thing. And so the 2000s, it's become a U-turn where people don't like to do too much comparisons anymore because they want to try and focus on each one as a separate entity. So, nevertheless, I've had a lot of intrigue in my work and a lot of rejection as well. But I do also think that there is a lot more to be learned through comparison and interaction with different traditions, because I believe that the mind is one and the universe is one, and we all have different ways to discuss it or interact with it. But essentially, the spiritual development has to be ubiquitous throughout the whole universe, or definitely the world at least. So I think that once we can understand how we're talking about the same thing in different ways, we can start to understand the essence of what makes spiritual development real and not just superstition.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think I've heard quite a few different teachings from various teachers who have done a lot of comparative studies and research on different traditions, and most of them reach the conclusion that despite the seemingly very different external appearances, then often the essence is a lot more similar than one might think. So I think it's quite nice to hear that. A lot of the teachers who have done comparative studies say, oh, actually, the essence is quite the same. I mean, of course, certain things are fundamentally different, but the teachings of the Buddha, the essence is a lot more similar than one might think. Yeah.
I'll just say it's very much the case. And unfortunately, there's a lot of, you could say, politics in Buddhism, and it's been like that for thousands of years. And that's been the major divide on Buddhism, not on the practice itself or the philosophy or the ideas, but people and groups and sects all fighting and splitting within each other. And so it's the same today, and it's been like that through Asia for a very long time. So if you can see beyond that, you can see how wonderful Buddhism is in all its different manifestations throughout the world in different cultures. It can appear here and there in different forms, and the essence of enlightenment pervades all these areas. This is the principle in Tendai of Ekayana philosophy and of the Lotus Sutra. And the Buddha teaches in many different ways to many different people according to capacity. So this is the reason why I like this school of tradition, and this is my approach to Buddhism in general. And if you see that, you'll enjoy Buddhism a lot more.
I love that. Yes, absolutely. And I totally agree. Like, it's so that when you start, my personal experience, like you start learning about Buddhism, there's all these differences that's conceptual. But then the more you try to understand rather than trying to look for the differences, then like you gain so much from every single tradition.
Yes.
Yeah. Helena made a comment. I don't think I fully understand what she means, but maybe you do, Venerable. I come across the Neoplatonists when I study the scientific revolution, ex Kepler.
Example Kepler, yeah. So Kepler and the Neoplatonists were basically, many of them were mathematicians. So they were very influential on discoveries on the nature of the universe, the nature of the movement of the heavens, astronomy, astrology, geometry. There's a movie on maybe on Netflix called Agora, which was a very famous. She was the head of a Neoplatonic school in Egypt, and she was killed because she was a pagan. But she was a very important mathematician in the past. So they have produced a lot of contribution towards scientific development. And that was the Neoplatonists as just mathematicians, but they were also more investigative, spiritual Neoplatonists as well. Of course, Pythagoras, we have the Pythagorean theorem, the famous theorem used in maths is named after Pythagoras, who was first and foremost a spiritual seeker, someone who believed in rebirth and was trying to escape rebirth through his own practices. So in Greece, spiritual practice and maths and etc. were the same. They weren't different.
That's really interesting. Lots of I heard that like lots of physicists at the end of their career, like they become super spiritual because there's a lot of things that I don't know if it's a hoax statement, but I believe that. I can see that.
Especially quantum physics. A lot of people
Yes.
start to see that like the reality is not what it seems as first. And once you understand that there's a hidden reality, that's actually the majority of the reality, and then there's so much to the world that we can't see that makes the world what it is, that in and of itself is what we call spiritual. So many of them start to look towards, like, especially Hinduism, some of them Buddhism, but it's definitely the case that many people turn towards spirituality when they investigate reality.
Yeah.
Um, can I ask a question?
Of course.
Sorry, this is just out of curiosity, really, out of interest, because I believe you mentioned the 32 marks that the Buddha had. And if correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that this particular section is not really covered in the early suttas, but a bit later on in the commentary. And I believe that one of the 32 marks, or maybe some of them, can sound really bizarre. Like if I remember correctly, the Buddha's tongue could reach his forehead or something, and then he would have been 18 feet tall, and then there was like I don't know, his the four fingers were of the same length, and that just sounds really bizarre. And maybe it had a purpose to really present it that way. But out of curiosity, why do you think was there a reason why the Buddha was depicted that way when clearly in the suttas probably he most likely he didn't look like that?
Hmm. Even the suttas themselves, I believe, not just the commentaries, I believe the suttas also have these marks of perfection because when the Buddha was born, as I said, for example, he had a wheel on his hand, and then there was an astrologer, a Vedic astrologer, who gave the prediction that he was going to become either a Buddha or a Chakravartin. I believe this is in the suttas, and his dad wanted to not become a Buddha, but wanted him to become a wheel-turning king, a Chakravartin. So he looked at all these signs. Now, nevertheless, there's lots of things in the canon, Pali Canon, which is symbolic, definitely symbolic, because there are many times in which the Buddha was, even after he achieved Buddhahood, he was walking around and he was seen to be like a normal person. People didn't know he was the Buddha. So that means he didn't have any extreme features that would be, wow, what a person has is 18 foot tall, golden hued, and has webbed fingers. These kind of things weren't seen. The only thing it says is he would emit rays like a light. People would see him shining. That's one thing people have said sometimes. However, it's most likely that these marks are uh, things that could be seen with the like a deva eye, the divine eye, or is purely symbolic. So the deva eye or the divine eye is the eyes that people with spiritual eyes can perceive. So it's not a physical thing. So this is one possibility, or it's just somehow some Indian concept of certain kinds of qualities that they use to describe through physical qualities. But they were not literal thing. He probably looked like a normal Indian Nepalese person.
And Leonie also said, I think the 32 marks were what helped him to be identified as sage or king at birth. Birth. And on that note, we have a Eugene saying, thank you for the very interesting talk. Would like to ask what are some practical strategies to be more mindful and happy in daily life?
Hmm. So definitely for me, mindfulness of the breath is the number one. Number one. When I first started practicing Zen, I began with mindfulness of the breath before I started doing the koan. And I think that when you're first starting, that definitely has been the most useful one. Both either it would be counting the breath or just following the breath without counting it, because you're always breathing. And so if you have a breath as the fundamental Buddhist practice, you can always return to it and then use that as the anchor, which links you to everything. Because we're saying all these complicated theories and all this stuff, but just the power of breathing, like even modern science, that people are starting to see how much power there is in mindfulness. All these different, multi-million companies spending all this money on mindfulness training are starting to see that it's really powerful practice. It's just so simple that we forget. But So make that your thing, and then anchoring yourself to the body. Because, like as I said, we're in our heads too much. We're always in our heads, and that's when we suffer. And our mind turns and rolls and revolves, and then it just goes off on a tangent. So if you can bring it back to the body, slow it down. Just this is a very important practice. Like get used to the feeling of your feet on the ground. Where if you're standing or if you're sitting, your bum on the chair. Just get used to that feeling. And then for me personally, whenever I do that, I start to see actually I'm not balanced, and I start to sit. How my posture improves, and then all of these things keeps you mindful and brings you back and takes you away from thinking about other stuff. The more you're not thinking about things that aren't important, the happier you are. Because the mind, it's actually in the Dhammapada, in the first couple lines, it talks about how the mind is the cause of its own suffering. When he starts to turn and turn things, but he did this to me, or she did that to me, I should have done this. All of this activity of the mind causes suffering. But as soon as you stop doing that, you can realize actually in this present moment, there isn't anything. And then you can actually realize that a lot of suffering is mind-made. So that is a fundamental practice before you worry about any complicated thing. Mindfulness of the body and samatha, those two things can just anchor you to the present moment, to being calm, and then from then on, you can start to worry about other things.
That's such a useful and simple but profound answer. It is like simple to think, oh, all we need to do is come back to the body, to the breath. But how many of us can really do that? It's very difficult. So if we can do that well, it's very, very profound. So thank you so much for sharing that, Venerable.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
And Eddie said, nice question, Eugene, to be happier in day-to-day basis.
It's very important. I think sometimes we forget why we practice Buddhism, or why we study Buddhism, and it's supposed to be because it actually makes us happier. And so the meditation should make us happy. We should feel joy, and we should feel glad. We should be relieved from stress. And if it's stressing us out when we're meditating, then we're probably doing it wrong, in my opinion. I think that we should focus on the outcome, the fruit of the practice should be pleasant and enjoyable. And then that's why we want to share it to other people. And that's why we all come together here, because it's supposed to be joyous. So joy and happiness is a very important part of Buddhism, and it shouldn't be depressing and miserable and sad. Because when you read the text, if you read it in depth, happiness is a major part of the practice of Buddhism. Freedom from suffering is the essence.
Thank you, Venerable. Sometimes, though, our journey can consist of difficult legs of the practice, so endurance and so on is important. What would you say to people who may be experiencing maybe a downtime or a more difficult time during their practice?
Hmm. Well, the best thing to do is have a community, and then you have a set network of support, because you just need a reminder that these things will pass. Because sometimes when you're suffering, you think it's always going to be that way, but when you have other people, they help to just remind you that the suffering is temporary. It's easier said than done, and that's why having a community is important. So, and never go through these things alone. So when you are finding it difficult, you just can have a little bit of a boost, a little bit of a push, a network of support, and that's very key.
Thank you. Yes, Sinsin said, yes, community is really powerful. The mutual support is very powerful. Kalyana Mitta. Completely agree. Um, And Eddie also said, yes to true happiness. Thank you, Ryōtoku. And he also said, I love Meta Center. We love you too, Eddie. Thank you for all the work you do to help support build this community as well. And we hope that this can be a place where we can all come together and share, ask questions, feel supported. Um, I hope I'm not oversharing, but when I go through a hard time and I come to Wednesdays, I know I have to come. I feel better always afterwards. So in a way, I am helping to facilitate, but everyone here is helping me be uplifted after the sessions too. Yes, Eddie, that's the tone. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for bringing this session in, Venerable and everyone. Any other
My,
questions? Yeah.
oh, I said my pleasure, my pleasure. I'm happy to be of service.
Mhm. I've got another question, Venerable. As um, this is just based on my observation. So clearly, the Buddha taught about jhanas, as you mentioned earlier as well, and it is something that is emphasized again and again. But I have observed sometimes that there is a tendency for certain groups of people to really overemphasize it. And so, for example, they advertise the jhana attainment, or maybe you can say, join this retreat in order to attain jhana. And while the intention is probably good, sometimes people can be quite obsessed with it and say they lose sight of what's important. For example, the importance of ethics and sila, which is, sometimes overlooked as well. So do you think this is something that you have observed as well, Venerable, or and
It's
then what do you think should be the right approach to make sure that people don't go off track because of this unintentionally, perhaps?
so it's very important, I think, um, to not chase experiences, and this is very tempting, and chasing states. Like the practice itself is the transformation of the mind and the liberation of suffering, because suffering is harmful for ourselves and others. So the Buddhist worldview is based on compassion. When the Buddha decided to be a Buddha and not just sit in the tree and just experience it for himself, he didn't have to teach. He taught because he wanted to assist and help others. So compassion was the motivation of the spreading of the Dharma, and we ourselves are recipients of that compassion, and it spreads continuously, and we've all been part of that. But sometimes people can become obsessed and only focus on maybe what they think is for the enlightenment for themselves, but it isn't our own enlightenment. Enlightenment is for everybody. And so once we do that, sometimes the ego can take over and start to then direct practice. And so we have to always have the ego in check. And so the reason why we have sila and all these things is because, one, the practice of caring for others and having the qualities that benefit others is a natural expression of the enlightened mind anyway. So when you're practicing jhana and you're trying to reach the enlightened mind, you can't have a meditative practices to reach it, and at the same time, if your behaviors are not reflecting it, it's counterproductive. You have to also reflect the behaviors of the enlightened mind itself in your activities and the way in which you view the world. So definitely, I think that people can start to miss like the broader picture and the difficult part. So we spoke about Buddhism is supposed to make us happy, but there are times in which you have to also face the difficult parts of yourself, and this was kind of touched upon subtly in the messages, because you need to be able to have a non-discriminating view of even yourself, because you may find that you have all of these qualities that you saw in others and you think, oh, this is a bad person, he has those qualities, but you will find that you also have those same qualities within yourself. All of us are capable of horrible things, depending on the circumstances. And so when we're meditating, these things can come up, and what do? You have to face it, and facing it makes you a better person. So the difficulty sometimes is seeing the ugly nature of your own self, but by seeing that, you can benefit others, because then you don't act upon that. Those who don't face their ugly nature manifest their ugly nature unknowingly and harm others at the same time. So the practice of sila and behavioral morality is tied in with the practice of meditation, because we're looking and seeing our evils within ourselves and facing it, accepting it, and liberating it, and then going out in the world and then being somebody who can spread joy in the world.
Thank you, Venerable. Yeah, absolutely. Like, um, a lot of things we don't like to look at within ourselves, and that's why we suffer. And then we project onto other people, and create suffering in our relationships.
Exactly, exactly. So this is a very common phenomenon, and so that's why Buddhist practice, it transcends even religious practice, because it's just everybody can benefit from this type of activity of learning how to be able to be a good person. And it begins in the cushion and then it ends when we're interacting with people, and the cycle continues. It's not as if we only practice Buddhism when we're alone sitting on a cushion or when we're reading a text. Buddhist practice in the Eightfold Noble Path, the reason why there's right speech, right livelihood, all of these things means that in the world in which we live in, we are continuing the Dharma all the time.
Thank you, Venerable. If there's no other questions, maybe we can do another meditation since everyone said they really enjoyed it. Are there any other questions that people have before we do that? Perhaps we can do another meditation. Are you okay with that, Venerable?
Sure. Should I guide you through the whole five, or should we just do a free one?
Uh, I loved your guidance too, and I think that's what people really enjoyed. Yep, I see some nods. So yeah, we'd love some guidance. Guidance. Sing Sing, were you gonna say something?
No, I was gonna. I agree with you. So maybe a bit of the guidance is actually also nice.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
thank you.
Great. And after you do the guided meditation, we have a question in the chat.
Okay, let me just get my show ready. So, guys, if you can slowly begin to get comfortable in your seats and enter your meditation positions. If you're seated, make sure that your feet are positioned evenly, and your hips and your bum and your seat on your chair is even, and your back is straight. Begin with mindfulness of the body through mindfulness of the breath. First, feel the air of the breath as it enters your nostril and enters into your body. Feel the movement of your chest as it inhales and it expands, and exhales, contracts. Follow the breath down to the abdomen and watch how your abdomen expands and contracts, expands and contracts. In your abdomen, find your center. Anchor yourself to your center. Allow the breath to flow naturally. Feel your contact with the ground. Feel your contact with your hips on your seat. The left side and the right side both equal. Your hips, your spine straight. Your lower back, your mid back, your upper back, your shoulders, yeah, crown of your head. Feel your whole skeleton supporting your body. Feel your nerves supporting your muscles. Your muscles, tension at all, anywhere. Be mindful of where it's tense and where it's relaxed. Be mindful of your skin and its contact with the air, contact with your clothes, temperature, and the texture. Being mindful of how you feel. Do you like this? Do you dislike this? Is it strange? Is it familiar? Allow all sensations to come and go freely, neither holding, nor pushing, nor rejecting. Embrace and accept any sensation that arises freely, allowing sensations to pervade through the whole body. Allow the mind to turn upon itself. Watch how the mind is aware of sounds, of sights, of feelings, moment after moment. Watch the flow of thoughts, moment after moment. Each moment of mind links to the next moment of mind. Follow the flow. Unite and draw the mind as one, moving in one direction. Flowing as one with mind. Take a step back and observe this observing, completely detached. Observe how the mind flows, how thoughts flow. In this pure awareness, serene and clear, observe all things without names, without forms, without ideas, without a past, just pure awareness. Allow all things to be free and drop your position, drop your standing point. Allow all things to flow freely. Neither subject nor object, neither self nor other. Neither inside nor outside. Pure freedom. Allow the mind to pervade everywhere, like space, like light. Allow the mind to return back within the body, being mindful of the breathing, of the feeling, of the earth. Slowly raise your hands onto the crown of your head, feel the top of your head, down towards the front, and open your hands. Open your eyes within your hands. Allow the light to stream as you massage your face, massage your face, your necks, shoulders, eyes, body, legs, all the way down to your feet, connecting back to your body, and back into the room. Thank you all once again.
Thank you, Venerable.
You're welcome.
If anyone has any questions or experiences to share, please feel free to do so in the chat or also in person. Just let me know. We do have one question from Ellie from Before Meditation. She asks, can you elaborate on Zen Buddhism in general, please?
So the literal meaning of Zen is jhana. So Zen is the Japanese word for chan, which is the Chinese word for jhana. And there is no Indian school of Zen or Chan, but it began in China based upon the teachings of Mahayana Buddhism from India. And Zen arose because there was a lot of intellectual conversations about the Dharma and focus on memorizations and discussions on the nature of emptiness. And so the mythic Bodhidharma began the school of Zen, focused entirely on zazen meditation, focused on, primarily speaking, the transmission of the enlightenment that the Buddha had that exists outside of words, or the teaching that the Buddha gave, which was beyond language, in order to have the realization of prajna. So it's very much influenced by Nagarjuna's Madhyamaka philosophy of emptiness, prajna paramita. And because Nagarjuna's approach was to use complex languages to confuse the mind in order for you to realize that the words are empty, Zen, which is a very similar approach, to use confounding language for you to realize that language is empty, and for you to realize the only way for you to realize the truth is for you to sit without words, without language, empty, and then to realize your true nature. So fundamentally, the main aim and practice of Zen is this, to try and get you to realize directly your true self, your true nature. They also use the term true self, which is controversial, but it's best to think of it as your true nature.
Venerable, there's a story about a flower, like giving the flower.
So this story is a way to express how the Buddha teaches. So the Buddha teaches through language and words. And the sermon was a flower sermon in which he held up just a flower without speaking. And Kashyapya, one of his disciples, smiled. And at that moment, he received a teaching that no one else in the crowd received. And Buddha announced that Kashyapa had inherited the Dharma eye. He inherited, at that moment, he realized Bodhi, and no one else did. And this is essentially how Zen Buddhism is transmitted from teacher to student. It's a transmission outside of language, but it's more a recognition. Buddha, when he held up the flower, expressed something. He expressed his subtle nature, something special that no one else realized. He thought he was just holding up a flower, but Kashyapa realized it and he smiled. And Buddha recognized that he smiled, he saw, and then that's the transmission. So the transmission in Zen is more of a recognition. I see, you saw my nature. It's like two mirrors seeing each other. And at that moment, it's a perfect view, two Buddhas seeing each other. So Zen focuses on that all of us are Buddhas. We all have Buddha nature, and we all can express this, but we all can't see it. And in that moment of seeing is what Zen is trying to do, and that's what Kashyapa did when Buddha held up the flower.
That's amazing. Thank you for that beautiful story. Venerable, I have 3 minutes left. I'd love to know, how do you sort of base your learnings on the Pali Canon at the same time, for example, stories like the flower or the Vajrayana, like the deity practices, they're not necessarily based in the Pali Canon. So how do you sort of practice
Mm.
basing it on Buddha's words, but at the same time being really open to all traditions?
Very difficult, and I think it's not many people are as eclectic as myself. But I believe that, first of all, I genuinely believe that the Buddha has great wisdom and experienced something very special in enlightenment. I think that's important, and I believe that over time, there's many people who want to add to that enlightenment experience and want to talk more about it. And there's many people who want to muddle it and mix it with other stuff. And as you look for the history, you always have arguments of people coming together and saying we should do this or we should do that, and then they'll go their separate ways and they'll write texts, and we have so many schisms and splits because of that. And along that trail, I think that there is a trail of development of the Buddhist teachings and his wisdom, and I want to understand that. I believe that it didn't just end when the Buddha died. I don't think Buddhism died with him. I think that many other people are connected to the same wisdom he did and spoke from that place. So I want to study all of Buddhism because I want to find everyone who connected with that wisdom and find their teachings and understand it and be able to then embrace it. So that's why I think it's important to navigate and find the wisdom within the whole stream of Buddhist history.
I really love that. Thank you. Sadhu, sadhu, Sing Sing said sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And yes, absolutely. I echo that. Helena said, in relation to the previous comment about two Buddhas meeting each other, she asked, is that related to Namaste? The light in me sees the light in you.
Yeah, very similar. So Namaste has its origins in Vedic philosophy and Hindu philosophy. And in that teachings, they have teachings based upon the idea that we all are Vishnu. And Vishnu is, funny enough, they're in a sense their version of Buddha. So it's a different deity, but the same essence that we all have within us in a divine. But they also have the belief on the Atman, that the Atman is one with Brahman. So this is, and the Atman is a light, a life, like the Jiva. So it's a very, very similar philosophy. It's embracing the inner divinity that we see within each other. If only we all lived like this in our everyday life, I think the world would be a much happier place.
Absolutely. Someone swears at you, you're like, I see that's coming from your light. That's all good. Uh, yeah, Xing Xing just said, I think I'll be dead before I can master all these teachings. Maybe next life. And actually, Venerable, I heard this is really memorable for me. When a Mahayana teacher taught me, they said he taught that one of the Bodhisattva's vow is to learn all the teachings that's suitable for all beings, not just those that's suitable for you.
Hmm. This is well, as bodhisattvas anyway, we all make the vow to understand all teachings, even though they're innumerable. This is one of the vows that we make, and it's just because it's the aspiration. You don't need to actually master all of these things. You don't even need to achieve it, but just the effort of doing that is meritorious. And so we only need to do the best that we can do. We don't need to be the best at everything, but we just need to try our best.
Yeah, thank you for that encouragement. Definitely, I think there's some, spiritual, like, don't feel like we're good enough or feel like we're not happy enough or bright enough or kind enough. Like, there's probably a lot of critical thoughts. Especially I find with Buddhist communities, we come into this wanting to be a better person, and yeah, inherently there's a lot of critical thoughts with that. So thank you for that sort of encouragement as well. Venerable, I love to know the meaning of your Chinese name, Lin asked.
Mm-mm. So the Chinese characters are the first one is Ryo. I don't know how it's pronounced in Chinese, but it means final or complete. And then Toku is like virtue. So it's kind of like complete virtue is the translation. The names were given to me by my teachers. So yeah, my original name was Seitoku, which is like was pure virtue, and then my teacher, who has Ryo in her name, gave me her part, the Ryo A. I became Ryōtoku, so it became complete virtue.
And thank you for pronouncing that name as well, because I was not quite sure exactly how to pronounce your name.
Oh,
I should have actually checked with you first, but I thought like, so Ryōtoku, is that correct? Right?
that's
Yeah.
right, that's
You're a natural, Xing Xing.
right.
Lin said that's what I think. Thank you. What a beautiful name.
Thank you, thank
Complete
you.
virtue and aspiration.
I have to. It gives me a goal to set.
Indeed, right after, learning all the teachings of the Buddha, you're different.
I believe it's time now, right, Sophia? Yeah.
That it is.
So we
Pass
have
over to you.
come to the end of the session. Thank you so much once again. And just wanted to let everyone know that Reverend Ryōtoku is coming back next Monday, actually. So there'll be another session on Monday. So as you know, that the Monday sessions focus on any aspects of the Buddhist teaching, not just the meditation aspect. And Reverend Ryōtoku will be talking about consciousness and the five wisdoms, if that's correct, yeah. And also on Wednesday, next Wednesday, we're going to have a visitor from Germany. So Venerable Sukatito, who is part of the Insight Dialogue, is actually coming in person, and he'll be staying for about 2 weeks, and he'll be running a few sessions at Metta Center in person. And I believe the title for next Wednesday is The Power of Pause, how brief moments of contemplation can transform our lives. So please come to that session if you can. We also have Ajahn Yu's retreat, a 4-day retreat starting on Thursday, the 22nd of May, until Sunday, the 25th of May. So you can find all the information on the website, and if you're interested, you can sign up to that. And there's quite a lot of other events as well coming up. So that's all from me. And before we close the session, normally we invite the teacher to close the session by doing some kind of dedication of merit or prayer or closing message, whatever you like. Would you be open to doing? Would you be open to doing that, Venerable? Yeah.
I don't have my prayer sheet. I would have done the chanting for the dedication of merit.
Yeah.
Because we're still in the process of moving, so I've got it
Sure,
somewhere
sure.
packed.
Yeah. Oh,
I,
whatever
I
you
would,
like.
I would just like to say, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it's been a great pleasure and an honor because I normally just do this with our Tendai community. So being able to share my experiences and everything I've learned with other members of the Buddhist community is a huge honor to me. It means a lot to me. I'm glad you had some benefit from my experiences. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and see you next Monday.
See you Monday. Take care, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Bye
Thank you
bye.
so much, Venerable. Looking forward to seeing you again. And everyone for Ajahn Yo's retreat, just a huge call out. If you'd like to help, we're looking for volunteers for transport and dana, providing lunch. So someone to provide lunch for Ajahn Yo. If you'd like to offer dana or transport help, that would be great. And yes, definitely the retreat as well. Thank you. And thank you, Venerable. Really sincere thank you for sharing your knowledge and tips today.
Bye.
Thank you,
So much.
Cici, for emceeing and everyone for participating too.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Good night.